Good morning, everybody. It's Friday, October 22nd, 2021. I'm Charlie Fink. I'm here with Ted Schilowitz. It's This Week in XR. Our special guest this week is Paul Travers, the founder and CEO of Vuzix, an AR headset maker that has been riding the tech stock boom throughout the pandemic. I look forward to catching up with Paul. They've been in the business for over a dozen years and have been evolving with us every step of the way. He's a great guy. Can't wait to get into that conversation. But first, Ted, we'd be disappointed if Facebook and the metaverse weren't the lead story, and they once again did not disappoint.
Continue to grab the news cycle.
I mean, oh my God, it's and you would think they would want to shut up for a little while and get people's attention turned to something else, but it's like they can't help themselves.
Yeah. Well, they're jockeying and they're working through their problems and they're working through their ethics and I think go ahead.
So they got 10,000 employees working on the metaverse or their Facebook reality labs here in the US, and they're going to double that number.
Right. That actually may be more significant to folks like us and our listeners.
Yeah, I mean,
the name change stuff, which is the fodder that everybody wants to talk about. But adding another 10,000 humans, regardless of whatever the size of your company is, to commit to a new area of business,
and not just any humans. They're
yes, these are high-end humans.
Yeah.
Right. But it's a massive, economic commitment and strategic commitment to a company to say, we don't only believe in this metaverse concept as a talking point, as something we're going to dabble in. We're going effectively all in on this. And we're going to hire the amount of human resources across the engineering spheres, the research spheres, and the deployment spheres to make this real. So it's a very, you cannot not pay attention to this. It's very important. When a company says, we're committed to adding thousands and thousands of employees to do something, their goal is to really make this real and get out there in the compute space and compete across this this landscape.
And we'd like to change our name while we're doing that, by the way.
Yeah, and by the way,
tarnished brand that reminds you that we have very little in the way of business ethics. Forget about that. We're going to create a sweet brand like Beach.
And the things I think about when this came up, and I'm curious if you had the same reaction.
I think, well, I mean, I guess, it's everybody's just speculating, and it is, salacious to think that they're doing it.
My instincts, I'm just curious if you thought this too. My first gut instinct was the New Coke debacle. You don't remember New Coke, right? And then they had to go back to Old Coke. And then
I know, because that was pretty incredible. I don't know whether that would happen.
The evolution of branding as nobody calls FedEx Federal Express anymore, right? They literally they modernized their name and evolved it, and even consumer food brand like Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Hewlett Packard is now HP.
Right. So there's an interesting legacy.
I don't think that's what's behind the Facebook.
No, not at all.
I do. I mean, I think that they're just leaning it. I wonder how metaversy the brand really will be in the end. I hope it's not. Honestly, I'd like them to pick a neutral name like Amazon and then make a brand with their product and the quality, rather than finding some fancy word that then they're going to aspire to.
Well, they are obviously leaning into that horizons concept for all of their metaverse stuff. So there's a logical sort of trajectory of that.
Yes, several people have suggested they're going to change the name of the company to Horizon, which would be easily confused with Verizon. So like I said, I'm hoping that they'll choose something that means nothing, and that the meaning will be added by the quality of their services and their products.
Well, if they're turning a page in some ways and really trying to express that, then okay, we'll give them a wide berth and see what happens.
I mean, it's not a crazy idea, right? That they're going to turn all these brands, Instagram, WhatsApp, Oculus, into operating business units, and then there's one kind of conglomerate name.
Well, like Google and Alphabet did with Alphabet, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. So giving them the benefit of the doubt. And by the way, let's turn to the good news segment of our show. Happy birthday, Quest.
Yeah, 2 years and selling like hotcakes, right?
Wow. I mean, I wish we knew how many. It's clearly in excess of 10 million at this point. Probably, but how many? It could be twice as many. It could be even a little less. But I wish we could get some real guidance.
Well, and the things that are really relevant to folks like us is, at the numbers that they're selling, where are people from a daily use, weekly use? How much software are they downloading? How much are they spending, per month on the soft goods that are associated with the hardware, right? Which of course we know from.
Well, sure, they're selling the hardware at a loss. So the whole idea is that they're going to sell enough razor blades to cover the cost of the razor.
Right. So those the really relevant sort of statistics and research is, are people actually engaging with the device and using the device? Normal consumers. I'll tell you a little anecdote. I was at my general GP doctor just doing my late 50s checkup, and he was just talking about how he's become a Quest user, and he tells me the games that he plays with his friends, and he's like us, pro putt. He's into pro putt and golf because he's a golfer, he's a doctor. And he, I said, have you tried the driving range yet? He's like, not yet. Okay, we'll join in the driving range. He's played some of the ping pong games and 11-11, and I said, have you done Robo Recall yet on the Quest? He's like, no, I haven't. I'm like, tonight do Robo Recall. It's interesting, but he's a doctor, right? That just is into this because he needed a getaway from the pandemic stuff, and he bought one.
My concern in general about the Quest, and I think I've told you, I see this with my students who are in our XR minor at Chapman, and they love the Quest. They take it home with them for the summer. We give them all a Quest. They take them home with them for the summer, and I'm like, so what were you doing this summer with your Quest? Not much. Well, why not? Well, because there are video games, and there was this thing on Netflix, and
a lot of distractions out there. Yeah.
So many competing things for people to use, to do with their time. So I think it's slowly getting there. The Quest, but I do think the key question is how frequently and how long.
Right.
And I think that it may be as excited as we are. And look, I mean, we've come from nothing. So the Quest is really something, but is it good enough yet to get people to change their behavior? Is it good enough yet to get console gamers playing VR games instead?
And so, I think we're starting to see the chips of the armor, pieces of it starting to fall. It's not what I wouldn't consider it a movement yet. I would consider it the start of it.
Because I think that for a lot of regular people, they put it on and they're like, oh, I'm inside of a video game. This has nothing to do with reality.
Right.
And I think I so wish we had called it simulated reality and not virtual reality, because people have an expectation of reality. Nonetheless, VR is here to stay. The Quest is really getting somewhere. It bodes extremely well for the whole industry. And certainly, Facebook's positioning within it. But the games, of course, are getting better and better. But the biggest birthday present Facebook, the Oculus Quest could have gotten, was Accenture buying 60,000 of them for training new employees. I mean, what a freaking validation that is.
Yeah. And they're, these companies that are growing really, really fast can't scale in any other way than to essentially use an extension of what we like to call the metaverse to start to train people at scale and use these simulation behaviors. It's working a lot, right?
Well, leave it to enterprise, and we'll talk about this with Paul Travers when we get him on here in a minute. But leave it to enterprise to immediately see the problem. We need to be together, but we have to be apart, and immediately find a solution and deploy it. If only it worked that simple for computers, for consumers, right? We can't be together. Okay, let's buy a Quest.
It works. You know what? It's showing us the future, which is
Accenture is an exacting and scientific company, so they don't do these things without researching them and understanding the efficacy of the solution. So I think that is a real powerful endorsement for VR training for sure. A new headset this week from Virgio.
Yeah, on the other side of the spectrum, right? On these like high level, but starting to get a little more prosumery, but you're still talking about a multi-$1,000 device.
It's a $2,000 headset, but that kind of technology cost $6,000 yesterday.
Yesterday, right? And you're still talking about a high-end GPU type computer to connect to it, but the dynamic of the use case of people needing high fidelity experiences in a VR headset that is not in the many thousands of dollars, which it was just one cycle ago, also bodes well for this industry. There's going to be lots of sectors of this industry that are going to use it. I spent a lot of time with some of the auto manufacturers and sort of the bowels of them design use cases, and they were using Vives at the time, and with very sophisticated tracking systems and stuff. And
Well, they use the super
consumer-
high-end ones like the X-Tals that
They were really exotic stuff, but then they migrated to more consumer stuff because it was actually just more functional. Even though they gave up resolution, the trackers were better and the system was better and the software was better. So they're designing cars and they're designing interfaces and the way things look inside the car, inside VR, and they're yearning for that better headset because that's where that market is. They can afford this stuff, right?
Well,
So
you and I both put on these headsets, the X-Tal is really more brilliant than reality.
Yeah.
And I literally was doing a car simulation with them, trying to open the door to the car. Like, oh, this is stupid. I can just stand up and walk through.
Right. But your brain said, no, that's a real thing. You better open it.
Exactly. It was one of those things where you could read the names of the books on the spines of in the library.
Right. Well,
that kind of crazy fidelity.
Back to the consumer aspirations, one of the things that, of course, was sort of buried, when they're changing their name and stuff, but Zuckerberg teasing this retina quality headset in their research labs is very much like this Varjo approach. But, he's thinking mass scale. He's thinking X amount of years from now, I can take a small loss leader product like the Quest 2 and make it a truly photorealistic device. And there's going to be use cases for that as well. So it's quite an interesting time. I mean, it's never not an interesting time for us, but this is very
So a couple more things we'll just hit on real quick before we get to finish up the news. The Glimpse Group. You know what the Glimpse Group is?
Yeah,
they're this conglomerate based in New York that acquires small, profitable XR companies. So they just acquired their 11th company, XR Terra. Not a huge company, a small, profitable company helping other corporations train up their workforces for spatial computing.
Right, and it's an interesting bet, right? They're betting on the sector. They're spreading out. They know that all those companies won't survive, but they're wanting one or two hits across, a calendar year, a year that can be beneficial and grow. And it's no different than any other industry sector sort of investment strategy.
And they trade on the NASDAQ as VR.
Yeah,
so how can you not love that? That's like Matthew Ball's EFT,
right? His fund.
ETF trading as Meta.
Yep.
So last but certainly not least, Epic Games throwing the doors to the store open to the crypto-based games that have been banned by Steam.
Yeah. The classic, when someone else says no, someone else will say yes, right? And Epic is saying yes, and as long as it's legal, they will support the idea of these crypto-oriented earn-to-play concept games.
Well, it's also just that this idea that Epic is going to start building its own app store.
Right. They're all
that ultimately is where the showdown is going. They want their own app store, and they want people like Apple and Google to stop blocking their apps on their devices.
Yeah. The next step in the evolution of all this.
The next step. Well, let's get to Paul. This is going to be a great conversation. Our guest this morning is Paul Travers, the founder and CEO of AR headset maker Vuzix. Vuzix uses a lot of different technologies to approach the problem of head-mounted displays for augmented reality, primarily for enterprise. I'm thrilled to have you on the show this morning, Paul. Great to see you. It looks like we're going to be having our conferences in the real, so I'm actually going to see you in the physical world shortly.
Yeah, it's very, very true. As much as the metaverse seems so exciting, people really do want to get back to reality at the same time.
Yeah, I'm expecting the shows to actually be pretty well attended. I know some people are staying away, but and perhaps it won't be at the euphoric 2019 levels, but it's going to be more than I thought. I think both at AWE and at CES.
Charlie, it really does feel like COVID is beginning to lose its battle, thankfully, and the world is going to start coming back to normalcy in a way. I think some things have changed forever, though. So, and in some cases for the better. So,
well, that's a great place to start, Paul. How do you think things have changed and are not going back? What things have changed permanently?
Yeah, so it's expensive to get on an airplane. It consumes a lot of fuel to get on an airplane. You can only do just so much when you're on an airplane to do tech support or do an audit in a facility. But with the advent of technology, like all of this everything. I mean, from Zoom calls like we're doing now. I mean, we're doing this. Clearly, we're not in the same room even, but we're able to have this nice recording of what's going on between us and update everybody. It's even more incredible when you can wear a pair of glasses, be hands-free, and literally teleport to China to see what's going on your plant floor. And in the medical space, especially, COVID made it impossible to get inside of a hospital. Yet some operations had to continue, and remote support, teleoperations, that side of Vuzix's business has just really taken off in a big way. And so these kind of remote things are saving money. They're allowing more and more things to happen that would take time to happen because the med tech can't get there until 2.5 weeks from now because he's booked up kind of stuff. So COVID opened those doors, especially in medical. The medical community takes a long time to adopt new technologies, and they were forced because of COVID to do things so they could operate. And that's based for Vuzix, from Medacta to Pixie to Medtronic. I mean, the number of med tech companies that are embracing this whole remote support and remote operations with smart glasses on is amazing to me.
You know, it's funny, telemedicine has been something that, as I'm sure you know, has kind of been happening for the past 25 years, but the institutional obstacles, even in a community which is based on science, were almost impossible to overcome. Who pays for the training? Who pays for the hardware?
Yeah.
Who, you know, does the insurance company approve it? Is it HIPAA compliant? And man, the day after the pandemic hit, everybody was like, what HIPAA requirements?
Yeah.
I mean, unbelievable, like 20 years of roadblocks just disappeared instantly.
Yes. Well, I think the medical community is about better outcomes and doing what's best for the patient. And during COVID, there was no way to do what's best for the patient without adopting these things. That said, now, Charlie, I mean, most of the applications that run on Vuzix glasses that are in that space, they're all HIPAA compliant. You know, they meet the standards now. And doctors, you put the thing on and it just works. Glasses on, QR code scan, boom, you're connected to who you want to be. In fact, today with our glasses, you can connect almost all of the equipment in the operating theater through this HIPAA compliant web interface that allows expert medical tech or another doctor to see what's going on and learn how to do an operation for proctoring, training purposes, right on through to, you know, am I using the right stent for this surgery?
And Paul, you are an interesting breed of company in head-worn mixed reality, augmented reality. That's a public company, and, you know, is publicly traded on the market. That's still a very unique characteristic of most of these companies.
Well, and it's a pure play XR company, right? Vuzix doesn't do this and have some other huge business.
Correct. So that's why I was curious to hear your journey over the last couple of years, and since you're one of the founders, you know, what it took
the only founder.
What it took to achieve that objective, and what it feels like to be a public company in this space. I think a lot of our listeners and viewers would be very interested in that.
We have a long history of being in this space, and it goes back before we went public in 2009. I've actually, Charlie, if I'm being frank, there's a lot of folks on my team here that really have plugged hard since 1997. Wow. And in fact, my first company in the VR space, Vuzix bought in 1997 to start the company. If you look back in your history books, you'll see there's a product called the VFX1. It was the first consumer VR headset in the marketplace, big football helmet kind of a thing. That's where we came from. We went to the defense space. We were making, you know, lightweight, which is where we learned, like, if it's big and it's heavy, people aren't going to wear it. They're not going to be able to use it. And that's been our theme since we made those big headsets, is look, in enterprise, in the defense space, you've got to make these lightweight gizmos. So, but if you look at over that period of time, there has been a lot of roadkill. This industry has, it's a hard one if you think about it, but it's really starting to happen now. And there's a lot of technology changes that have come along the way, and Vuzix is driving some of those that are making these products more and more viable, and in fact becoming almost indispensable. And to get there, though, there was a point in time where a VC and private funding and angel funding, all they saw was roadkill. Nobody wanted to invest in companies like Vuzix, except potentially in the public markets. So we did take Vuzix public in 2009. We started on the Toronto Stock Venture Exchange. This is a rare thing actually to be successful at, also to go from a smaller exchange like the Vancouver Stock Venture Exchange to the OTC and then to the NASDAQ. I mean, they're rough waters to navigate through, quite frankly, especially in an industry that goes through fits and spurts. But the core technology that Vuzix has is, I think, so important to this industry. And we're gaining more and more traction. And then if you tell that story correct, and as it unfolds, I think the market becomes to more and more appreciate where Vuzix is going. If you look at the industry in general right now, it's a great time for Vuzix to be public, because the whole AR space is about ready to just, blossom into the biggest industries in the world. In fact, this is the future of computing. Think about it. There used to be mainframes that was an entire building, and then rooms, and they were air conditioned in order to work, and then finally the desktop, and then the laptop, and then the tablet, the PC that turns into the smartphone. That's most people's computing devices today, is their smartphones. But when you can take the digital world and connect it to the real world, it changes everything. And smart glasses are the things that are going to do that.
So here's an interesting follow-up on that. So some of the largest companies in the world with the largest valuations on planet Earth are dabbling, and their dabbling is probably more than you can spend over the entire lifetime of your company as it stands now. So let's compare you to a company like Microsoft and their HoloLens aspirations. And what are your key advantages? How do you talk to your customers, get them excited about what you're doing for these very specialized purposes as it relates to these large companies with other very large aspirations across the entire compute stack?
I've got one for you, Ted. Buying a Vuzix headset does not require you to pay a $5,000 a month subscription to the Microsoft Cloud.
To Azure, right? Yeah.
Well,
so just interesting perspective, Paul. To hear your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's going to be lots of versions of these devices in the coming 5 to 10 years. It'll be fun to see some of it, frankly. Vuzix has a common theme. People use our product to go to work, and they're beginning to deploy them. And when you deploy, it's not for an hour. You give these to somebody, they run for an 8-hour shift, and then the next guy comes on and there's another 8-hour shift right behind it. And a 2.8 ounce, lightweight, high-powered 8-core processor, just the right screen size, 4K camera that streams really well, does exactly what needs to get done and can be worn for an 8-hour shift. Right. And I'm not trying to throw HoloLens under the bus. I think Microsoft, the HoloLens is an amazing piece of kit. Spatial computing does it better than anybody out there today. It's all in one. But if you give that to a person that's, stacking pallets, an hour after he has that thing on, he's going to want to take himself out and quit, because it hurts to wear something for an 8-hour shift that big. And, when you're picking out of warehouses, or if you're a doctor and you've got all this personal protective equipment on, and you've got your eye loops on, and you've got all this stuff that you need to perform an operation, where does HoloLens fit?
Exactly right. Well, to the point of, that gigantic military contract at $22 billion that was on this like massive forward press trajectory. And then Charlie and I were always like, I've got to imagine at some point, this is going to start to people are going to start to figure out wearability dynamics, and they're going to start to change their use case of this and their trajectory on this. And I think you're clearly describing that challenge. Is there is not one device that will be the master of all. There will be very specific use cases for probably the foreseeable future, where things are designed and relatively purpose-built for a use case. And that's kind of where it sounds like you fit into that.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, the other thing about enterprise, versus some of the aspirations for like a Facebook or a Google or an Amazon that they might have, right? They need a device that's got a wonderful user interface on it, that's got a ton of applications, at least enough of them in a general enough usability that the average consumer will put them on and say, wow, this is so cool. And they're going to compare it to their phone and all the things that it can do, right? And so that's a really hard problem to solve. Yeah.
I think the consumer market for AR HMDs has yet to emerge. I don't know what the application is for an all day, everyday AR wearable. for consumer. I just don't know what it's going to do that's better. But I do know, obviously, if you work in a warehouse, how great it is to have your hands free, to be able to actually do the work, while all of the computing takes place, not with different devices hanging off your body, but just with your eyes when you look at stuff. So, it's so obvious the advantage to that, and not just in efficiency, but also in safety, versus, a headset or some kind of modified glasses that I would wear that would tell me what the weather is when I can see perfectly fine what it is right now. So, the bringing the smartphone up in front of your face, sounds like a good idea for a second. But when you consider what that would mean in terms of interrupting your field of view, in terms of giving you information you don't want when you don't want it, it just seems to be such a long field at the moment. Perhaps, in 10 years or in 20 years, it might emerge, how we might think differently about head-mounted displays. But I think right now, at least for augmented reality, enterprise is, the big opportunity. And so few businesses have yet made the switch.
I think, Charlie, for us anyway, right? We have been working on the technology to make glasses that are small and trim and sexy. We think that's critical, whether you're an enterprise or the consumer especially, right? I mean, people buy their phones and you see them, they're polishing them. They, they treat them like they're this like fashion statement even. Glasses are worse. So you got to make the glasses tech so slick. And things like micro LED technology's got to come along. The display engine's got to get smaller. The waveguides have to get better. There's things about forward light that has to get removed. You kind of know drill here, right? Those are all things Vuzix is working on. We're working on them for the enterprise space right now. More than one of the big dogs, they're always knocking on our door. What are you doing now, Paul? Kind of stuff, right? But it's inevitable that ultimately these things are going to be everywhere, right? But to your point, the easy, low-hanging fruit is enterprise. You can write an application to solve a problem, simple one, right? You're stacking pallets. The glasses connected to the computer system that's out there knows the next 30 things that got to get stacked on that pallet.
Mm-hmm.
So it can pre-stack the pallet so that the user can just look, oh, this has got to go here in the pallet, and it tells it where to put it. You can't do that with anything today.
Right.
I mean, give the guy a tablet that's connected, and he could do it, right? And it's coming, but how do you use the tablet, go back and forth to the pallet, and use your hands to pick the damn stuff and pack it, right? So these are things that just work today. They're incredibly valuable. And ultimately, this whole metaverse thing, right? I think the metaverse is going to be great for communications and doing stuff like what we're doing here. We could be sitting in an office together. It would be great for enterprise, right? But where I think it really has a potential to play in enterprise is with digital twins and having the metaverse tied into your factory. You got the glasses on, and it takes all those invisible systems that are part of the metaverse now, because the IoT stuff is all labeled and put in place in the virtual sense. But then as you're walking through the factory floor, that information just shows up. So you can look at the bearings on the motor and see they're overheating, and you need maintenance on it so the equipment doesn't go down, those kinds of things. So in enterprise, I think the metaverse plays, but it's mostly through digital twins and connecting that sort of stuff. And this whole idea of communications, like what we're doing today. Of course, the metaverse, there's a lot of people that will not take the red pill. They're going to want the blue pill, and they're just going to want to spend as much time as they can, because you could clearly see how compelling it could be. VR is getting better and better. I mean, you got to hand it to it. It's still, to me, a use it for an hour kind of a thing. It's not something that, but there are some people that are really into it and use it for much more than they did 20 years ago when I came out with the first headsets and stuff.
Well, the fascinating thing about humans, as we know, is humans find a way, right? And to the point of your early reference of, the smartphone dynamics and how many things we do with that little pane of glass connected to a computer chip connected to this cloud infrastructure. I think even the smartest people 40 years ago could not have anticipated how this is constantly connected to our human behavior every moment of every day, from the waking to the sleeping. it's almost, it is the world of sort of science fiction come to life. And then as you start to think about getting it up into your eyes and getting it where your visual system is, this idea of what you're working on as we sit here in 2021, it'll be very interesting to like interview you every 2 or 3 years to see how far humans have developed all of these use cases that even you didn't anticipate would be, being accomplished. And like what I'm seeing, because I do a lot in the medical world as well, in the pro bono parts of my life, how much is being accepted and adopted of this visual overlay into the operating system, in the operating room for all types of things, where the surgeons are literally, using this robotic augmented visual system to actually run, mission critical, life critical things. And that would not have happened in any way, shape, or form 10 years ago. So it's fascinating that you're in this space.
The iPhone came out with what, like 6 apps on it?
Yeah.
And it was
That's right.
envisioned as a way to get email and the likes, and a much better.
A web browser and a newsreader, and that was
Yeah.
it.
And boy, look at how much it's changed.
Mhm.
It's amazing. And to your point, in the medical space, it is amazing to me how people are using our glasses, and a med tech can do, multiple operations a day now, not just in a week. And he can join a screen just like this, but instead of you guys being here, I got your heart rate, and I got the x-rays for the patient, and I got the doctor's real-time view of what's going on. And all these things I can zoom in on as the med tech, or as the doctor helping the doctor that's in South Africa learning how to do this open heart surgery. And I don't have to leave my house to do it. So it's revolutionizing the operating theater for sure.
Agreed.
Paul, the big headset in your inventory that has been the most popular is called the M400. Is that right?
Yeah, the M400 right now is kind of the flagship, Charlie. Yep.
Yeah, the M400, and this thing is just loaded with sensors and just practical things like flashlights, and all the things you'd have hanging off you are kind of all hands-free now.
Yeah, it was built literally to be sort of like the Swiss Army knife, but access to everything you needed, not spatial computing. It's not about the classic, augmented reality where the
Right. If we were splitting hairs, it would be assisted reality, because it uses a monocular micro display that kind of floats on your peripheral vision that you shift your attention to when you need it.
Yes, but it's a beautiful OLED display, absolutely clear,
super bright. I know, I've seen it.
Yeah, it's so functional for the enterprise space. And we built this thing so you could wear it on hard hats, on baseball caps, on headbands. We have a mount now for all of the doctors' operating light systems that they wear. So it just slides onto that. So so this thing is designed to go to work, and it gives you the features and functions you would need while you're at work. And it was thought out for that. Think about it, Charlie. We started as an M100. And this is the M400, right? So there's been a lot of improvements, and it's so funny. It's followed the whole what SoC is available from the suppliers of guys like Texas Instruments with their OMAP series at first, right? And then it went to Intel, and then it went to Qualcomm now, and because these were the only processors that could work along the way. And as they kind of moved and went the only ones, by the way, we somehow managed to use the same series of processors as Google-ish along the way too. But yeah, this has come from years of input from the customers and the likes. And I will say that over the last year and a half, the COVID years, as I would call them, this whole remote everything has taken off in a big way. Unfortunately, it hurt Vuzix's business on most of the other things. Anybody that was looking at how do I, pick better warehouses and stuff, those companies got all so damn busy just trying to keep store shelves stocked, right? They did, and those employees that were working on those more advanced programs, they were all sitting at home, so they couldn't move forward. All that stuff is changing now. So now the other use cases besides all these remote and medical things are starting to come to life at Vuzix. It's exciting to see things like these insurance companies coming alive, and the warehouse picking stuff coming up, and onboarding has become a big deal. I mean, some of these companies are hiring, 300 to 500 people a day even. And how do you train all those people? And so now that the post-COVID days, knock on wood, are coming, I think you'll see that the pace of enterprise start to pick up in some of these other areas for smart glasses.
Well, and Paul, this is a question that I've had and thought about for a long time. You touched upon it. I'm curious in terms of the monocular display concept and use cases versus the binocular display use cases. Are you still finding that most of your clientele and most of your usability testing and desirability of product is on single eye, where one eye is essentially, you know, clear and open to the world and the other eye is getting, or are you starting to see a crossover where people are trying to figure out actually having a stereoscopic type system? I'm actually curious where you sit in the kind of evolution of these things right now.
So the M series products at Vuzix, the M4000, M400s, you know, they're monoculars. That's
singular, right? Single, right.
We're tech heads, right? So these guys have model numbers. They were built as monoculars. They were built as a remote information display. It's great because it's like the heads-up display on your car, or even just the speedometer on your car, where you glance at it when you need it, but it's out of the way. And that works really well for the use cases and where most of the ISVs are focused for our current glasses. That said, we announced a bit ago these next generation glasses that are coming. They look strikingly like a pair of Oakleys from the front, especially, or conventional fashion forward looking glasses. They've got binocular displays in them. They're super comfortable to use. And we think that interface is going to have its own place in some of the areas. There's no reason why the monocular still will not be very, very successful, quite frankly. It gets the job done for what it was made for, right? But we see binocular in the end as the best place to be. And we see optical see-through systems as the best place to be also.
But would you say that, like, at this stage of what you sell in a year time, 90% or more of your products are monocular in use case? Is that kind of the right?
Ted, I'll go 100% because
100%. Okay, so this is really interesting, Charlie, for us to even study the sector, right? That the true use case of this is what they figured out, is that people need a heads-up display in the right area on a single eye today. And as it evolves over time, maybe there'll be some change in that wind, but logically you found where the sweet spot of the market is and you're cultivating that. That to me is a very interesting perspective on business.
So our first binocular pair are actually safety glasses. They're designed to be used in environments, you know, where they're metal that might be flying off of a milling machine, or in pharma where there's chemicals around, and, you know, but in those cases, the customers made it very clear they don't always want the display on.
Right.
Times, based upon what they're doing, they want the display off, completely off. And in cases in medical, it's the same thing, where the display doesn't need to be there except for setup and or some feedback during certain parts of the operation. And so these optical see-through systems that have, you know, 90+% transmission are key. The ability to turn the display on and off when it's needed is key. Right. Not many people need to have that information in front of them 24/7.
Absolutely, right. It's interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah.
If you're a guy that's repairing a piece of equipment, right, you want a quick look at the manual, right? So you flip the display on, you got the PDF, wire 1 goes to XYZ header 7. Then you want it out of the way so that you can get the work done, right? So it's rare that you want everything overlaid. And until the focus disparity issues and convergence issues can be dealt with, so the real world and that stuff matches up really well, so spatial computing is there, we think that's the way it'll be for a bit. Or you're going to be making great big headsets that have lots and lots of sensors on it, and guess what, I hate to say it, but it's kind of more of low volume use cases and science experiments, and to be in the sweet spot, you have to be able to do the all day thing.
Yep. Right. Well, we see a lot of advantages in the entertainment field for creating fantasy environments that want to be pervasive. But what you're working on is a whole different part of the sector. It's productivity and industrial use case. And it's a very different thing that you're managing than what I live in every day. So it's interesting to hear the perspective, because I think about it a lot. You know, it's interesting.
Yes. Well, I think about your use case, the entertainment side of it, because we used to be there. We made a lot of products that were designed to watch movies on with your iPhone. In fact, our largest selling pair of consumer glasses, we had an OLED display in them. They were binocular and they were designed to plug into an iPod. And you could play, the videos when they first came out. Even they only had a monochrome screen on the earlier ones. And there was no batteries, nothing, man. You just plugged it into your iPod and you could kick back and watch really nice full color videos.
Mhm.
They were only, I think they were QVGA at the time, but
Yeah,
compared to that
yeah.
monochrome screen, and it just super lightweight. And in fact, we completely sold out of our inventory, and the company that was supplying us the OLEDs couldn't supply enough of them and ended up going out of business for other reasons. But this was a winter product. But I see smart glasses ultimately when they look really cool. People wear them everywhere. That this experience where you've got a 72-inch flat panel in front of you, the glasses are on, and for the most part they're opaque, so that you're getting a high contrast, maybe even fully immersive all the way around. But I see them colliding into a single device ultimately.
Well, watching video is the killer app of the smartphone. So
It sure is.
that
Yeah.
is where most hours on the smartphone are spent playing games or watching videos. And
TikTok.
all the other activities that we do are really not nearly as popular.
Right, TikTok, and the next one, the next one. When I first saw YouTube, I said, why would anybody want to use this for anything? I just didn't get it.
Yeah.
And I use it all the time now. How do I?
It takes a little while to, oh, now I get it.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Well, thank you for taking the time to come on the show this morning. It was really great to catch up with you. Looking forward to seeing you at CES and AWE in 2 weeks.
Unfortunately, we're there. My team is there and everything. I won't be there, Charlie, so I'll miss you.
But you will be at CES, right?
Yeah, we got a 30 by 30 booth in the main hall, and
It's always mobbed. I'll make my way there.
sounds great. Well, we'll be showing some new stuff there.
Can't
Good.
wait.
Can't wait to see it. Thanks,
In
Paul.
fact, our first pair of binocular smart glasses. You guys might
Oh,
want to.
great.
Oh,
All right.
damn. Hell yeah.
Game
I'll
on.
be first in line.
Sounds great, guys.
All right. Have a great weekend. Thanks again, Paul.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Everybody, thanks for joining us.